Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. For those of you who have liked and subscribed, I thank you so much for that because it's so important to get this information out to where we can start having public discussions about these things. So please like and subscribe if you have not, but thank you again for those of you who have. Today I want to do a video about exhaustion. And interestingly enough, I've been wanting to do this video for a little while, but ironically I was too exhausted to do it. So I'm going to give it a try today. This is a very important video because we don't often realize how much exhaustion affects us, especially as autistic people. My earphone is starting to fall apart a little bit. So anyway, I want to talk to you guys about different types of exhaustion and why it's important to know about them, especially if you are autistic yourself or if you have an autistic loved one with whom it's a little bit more difficult to communicate. Exhaustion is such a vital thing to consider in every area of our lives because it affects every area of our lives. It affects our ability to do anything and everything. So it's important that we understand how exhaustion might differ a little bit for people like us than for non-autistic people who don't necessarily have the same types of sensitivities that we have. Now, we are very similar in many ways with non-autistic people because everybody gets exhausted, everybody feels the effects of exhaustion, but not everyone will be able to understand certain kinds of exhaustion and how we can be affected by them. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Normally when I do a video, I don't have any notes. I just speak freely, but today I had to do a little bit of research. So I do have a couple of note cards here that I will use to remind myself of what I had looked at. So when we talk about exhaustion, a lot of people are familiar with things like physical exhaustion or mental exhaustion or emotional exhaustion. Sorry about that. My hand slipped. Yeah, I don't have a tripod or anything expensive like that. I'm just holding my phone. So sorry about that if I have a little mishap, technological accident. But anyway, those of you who are new parents can relate to exhaustion very, very well. And these different things like mental or emotional exhaustion. People who are physically active and do a lot of physical exercise or physical jobs or whatever can often relate to physical exhaustion. So these are terms that we're familiar with, and we all know how we feel when we are pushed to our limits in these areas, especially when we're pushed to our limits with mental or emotional exhaustion, like when our kids are completely out of control and when the job has just been pushing every button that we have or whatever, our husband or wife or a significant other or whatever is just getting in our face all the time. We understand that kind of exhaustion. Or when you are trying to prepare a presentation for your work or your school and you've just been up for long hours studying and researching and doing all that and your brain is fried. We all have experienced that at some point or another, and we understand what that feels like. But I want to talk to you guys about different exhaustions that you might not necessarily be considering that affect us in very significant ways. So the first type is liver exhaustion. We don't always think about what our livers are doing, what our kidneys are doing, what our adrenal glands are doing. These internal organs have very significant jobs that they're doing literally 24 hours a day, nonstop. And those of you who have autistic loved ones or who are autistic yourself, who happen to be very picky eaters in particular, and who don't necessarily eat the healthiest things, you may not be realizing how that is taxing your liver, your kidneys, and those organs that have to metabolize what you're putting into your body. And it does put a lot of strain on them when we don't eat things that are necessarily healthy or that are varied enough in our diets. I struggle with that because eating for me can be very difficult sometimes. And so I often struggle with having a healthy diet that I need to have. I try very hard, but it's very difficult because of all of the other issues that affect my ability to function. So that is something we have to consider. Are our physical bodies able to sustain the kind of stress that we are living under? Now, if you have a picky eater, is there anything you can do about that? Probably. Is that a subject for another video? Probably. So, yeah, it's complicated. And if you are a parent of an autistic child who has difficulty eating, try not to be stressed to the point where it's damaging you about that. Just recognize it for what it is and just do the best you can, because it's not an easy problem to solve at all. And we all recognize that and we all understand that. But just keep in mind that if your diet is not as healthy as it should be, you are putting that kind of strain on your body and on your organs, and that will manifest in exhaustion. And for us as autistic people, it's going to probably manifest more strongly than for non-autistic people because of the other types of stresses that we endure every single day that other people don't necessarily endure. So that's definitely something we have to think about. Another type of exhaustion that non-autistic people might not really consider or think about often is neurological exhaustion or nervous exhaustion. This is a real thing. And it has the ability to manifest into very serious physical ailments. And a lot of times we will have physical issues, gastrointestinal issues, or different types of issues that will manifest in our bodies that we don't necessarily think are linked to neurological exhaustion, but they are. I'm not going to go through the whole list of what they are because this is something that you can research with your doctor, and you can definitely learn about this. I think it's really important to understand what neurological exhaustion is, and it's something that each person needs to look into his or her own life specifically with your doctor so that you can figure out what that means for you. But I wanted to bring it up because this is something that we often don't understand is happening, and it's very important that we know that it exists and that we really take the time to figure out how it might be affecting us or our autistic loved ones. Because remember, autism is a neurological condition. And so your autism is going to affect how your neurology works. And anything that taxes your neurological system is going to affect your autism as well. So this is something that you want to really consider. Other types of exhaustion that we need to consider as autistic people: sensory exhaustion, stress exhaustion. These are very, very significant. I was thinking about this a few minutes ago, and I had an example come into my mind as I was thinking about this. When I have to go somewhere, when I have to drive somewhere, I cannot take public transportation because of the sensory dangers of taking public transportation. So I have to drive whenever I have to go somewhere. And I always have to consider things like, what kind of sensory input am I going to encounter? That's going to determine what time of the day I go somewhere. It's going to determine what part of the city or town I can go to. It's going to be determined by a lot of things. When I'm driving, I have to weigh the different sensory options that I have. For instance, if I'm driving on the highway and the highway is relatively clear and I'm driving 70 miles an hour, that is a lot less sensory and neurologically draining than if I'm driving in the city and I'm going slower and there's a lot more traffic around, or if I have to make a lot of stops at stoplights and I'm stopped in traffic. Anytime I'm stopped in traffic, it can be a sensory nightmare for me. And so I have to be very careful as to when I drive, where I drive, and how fast I drive, because all of these things have a sensory effect because of what's going on outside of my car when I'm on the road. And that's just one example. We have to think about, when our children are in school, what kind of sensory experience is it? Are they sitting in one classroom the whole day? Are they going from class to class to class? Are they interacting with a lot of other kids in the class? Are there a lot of colors on the wall? Are there people wearing body perfumes or body washes that they can smell? Like what? I actually have a friend who skis, and sometimes we've skied together. And every time we ski together, I have become physically ill because she has this body wash that she puts on. And even though by the time she gets to the ski resort, it's been several hours since she's put it on, and other people aren't really affected by it, it's still so strong for me that it'll make me physically sick. So I have to be very, very careful in what proximity I come to her, even though this is someone that I love very much and I enjoy spending time with. But we have to consider, is the teacher wearing a certain type of deodorant or, shampoo or something like that? That could be affecting your sensory ability to perform in that environment. What are the noises going on in that environment? What are the textures of the desks, the chairs, and, whatever's going on? So there's so much going on that you have to be aware of that you don't know might be causing you to become sensory exhausted. Another type of exhaustion is social exhaustion. Those of us who are autistic are very familiar with social exhaustion. Oh my goodness, you go to an event and you have like people talking and chatting and chit-chatting about nothing and about stupid things, and you're just like, I can't do this. I just can't do this. And you come home and you are just so wiped out. All you can do is collapse. It's just unbelievable. And a lot of times we don't realize how easy it is to become socially exhausted. We don't have to be at a party. We don't have to be, at a social gathering. We could just be talking to another person, and that social interaction will completely wipe us out. So it can vary, and we don't want to ever underestimate the power of social exhaustion. Another type of exhaustion that we may not be familiar with is something called purpose exhaustion. Purpose exhaustion is when you kind of feel like you don't have a purpose, you don't have something driving you. And I think that this can indirectly affect a lot of us, because a lot of us have had our lives kind of dictated by other people to where we don't really understand who we are. We don't have a true connection with our identities. And so there may be some of us who don't necessarily know what it is that we have a passion for, or that we want to do or want to be, because we've been so beaten down psychologically by what other people think we should be. And this can cause a void, a purpose void, and that void can cause purpose exhaustion. And that can manifest in ways like depression and anxiety and different mental issues that people suffer from. Looking at my notes here, another exhaustion that is probably very, very common in the autistic community is something called values disconnect exhaustion. I'm going to read what the definition of values disconnect exhaustion is. It says values disconnect exhaustion is more supple. I'm sorry, not supple. I'm thinking of my horses again. More subtle and insidious than other forms of deep tiredness. Values disconnect exhaustion happens when a person has to compromise his character and beliefs in order to meet the expectations placed on him or her. What does that remind us of? This is what masking is. This is the foundation of masking. And we are very familiar now with what masking does to autistic people and to other people who are having to live their lives masking. Masking has devastating effects. It can even cause people to become so disconnected with themselves that it has actually been linked to suicide and suicidal ideation. Masking is something that we must take very, very seriously. And values disconnect exhaustion is something that we have to really look at as a problem that can have very serious and devastating effects. Now, all of these different types of exhaustion, I encourage you to research them on your own and to understand how they affect you in your own body. And it's also very important to understand that we can have multiple types of exhaustion that we're experiencing at the same time. And as we learn how different types of exhaustion affect us, we can also learn how to get relief from different types of exhaustion. And some types of exhaustion will not be relieved in the same ways as others. Like, for instance, there are certain types of exhaustion where, for me, getting relief from that means going skiing or kayaking or going outside and doing something physical. There are other types of exhaustion where I need to just physically collapse and go to sleep. There are other types of exhaustion where I get relief from doing a special interest, or from doing research, or from having an analytical conversation with a friend who is as analytically capable as I am. So we have to be very careful, because oftentimes people will tell me, oh, well, if you're so exhausted, why are you able to do this? Or why are you able to do that? Well, the answer is because the type of exhaustion that I'm feeling might be relieved by doing what I'm doing. That doesn't mean I can do what you want me to do. It means that what I'm specifically doing is tied into a specific type of exhaustion. It's connected to that, and it's allowing me to get relief in that sense. So it's important that we not judge people, and that we don't assume that because they're doing one thing, that means they're able to do something else that we might want them to do. And it's very, very important on the flip side that as autistic people, that we're very, very honest. And we don't use that as some kind of, way to just get out of doing something. Honesty is so important, because if you're not 100% honest with yourself and with others about what's going on in your body, the effects of that are going to be disastrous. Because it's really important that you are believed. When you say to someone, I can't do what you want me to do right now because I'm too exhausted, but yet I can go and spend time doing my special interest. It's very important that people believe you, because that is critical for your ability to survive. So that is why honesty is so important. Don't ever try to fool yourself. Don't ever try to fool other people, because your survival depends on that. So again, I'm going to just go over this list one more time, so that you can maybe go back and review them and study them for yourselves. Liver exhaustion, adrenal kidney exhaustion, stress exhaustion, diet exhaustion, physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, neurological exhaustion, social exhaustion, sensory exhaustion, purpose exhaustion, and emotional, I said that one already, values disconnect exhaustion. I hope I got them all. Well, again, thank you all so much for watching this video, and hopefully we can start a dialogue on this, and we will see you next time.